let's start talking a bit about me. You did a great introduction. So I'm software engineer at AmpMe, and I've been using Parse almost since it's out of beta. And when they went open source, I saw it as an amazing opportunity to move forward with the platform because as a service, it was very, very constrained to the limits that the Parse team wanted to put on it. So Parse came to fruition as a mobile backend as a service. So as a mobile developer, you don't want to care about what's going on in the backend. You don't want to use your database. You don't want to configure anything. You just want it to work. You want to focus on the experience and the code of your mobile app. That was free, which is pretty cool. And if you gain popularity, you had all sorts of plans that could scale up to hundreds of requests per second. So that was very, very appealing to the mobile developer crowd. It was schemaless, so that was very, very easy to implement changes in your models as you were coding your app. Oh, I forgot that. You don't have to deal with all the MySQL altering tables and all that stuff. You just write it in your code in the app, and it just works. And the security, which is for me the best feature that was put in, was managed with ACLs, and that made it very, very easy to reason about security and the security on your objects. At the time, there was a lot of competitors, Firebase, CloudKit. Firebase been acquired by Google and moving it forward. In all cases, you don't want to deal with the service itself. You want to use the SDK. And the SDK is really what makes the difference between one and another service. The easier and the best documentation you have in the SDK, the more likely you are to use it. So since day one, Parse has great documentation and SDKs for pretty much every platform. So let's rewind a bit and see the timeline. So it started in August 2011, acquired by Facebook in 2013. At that time, we started getting a bit worried. Is Facebook going to shut it down? And the CTO, Kevin, said, no, it's all right. We're going to move forward. 2013 was a very, very different time. If you think about it, Facebook hadn't made a big push on mobile. They were not generating significant revenue from advertisement in mobile. So maybe that made sense at that time to keep Parse up and acquire mobile developers and build a great ecosystem of mobile apps. In 2015, they started open sourcing everything. Everything for the client SDK. So you got all the SDKs that are open source in 2015, and then early this year, we've got the notice in January, okay, we're going to shut down. But unlike many Silicon Valley acquisition where the service just shuts down and the users has to find another solution, they provided the solution, which was open sourcing the platform. And then we expect the final clap next year in January. So if anyone is running Parse, just be ready at that time because it's not going to work anymore. So Parse got a great history with open source. These are all the SDKs that are available, and they are all open source. You can contribute to it. It's very, very open, very, very friendly to changes. And as you can see, you can run it pretty much everywhere. They are all leveraging the REST API, so there is no rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. That's one of the great benefits that we have right now with the platform. And so they added those two new major components to their open source contributions, which is the server and the dashboard. I contributed more to the server because I'm not really a front-end JavaScript guy, but if any one of you is in love with React.js, you should check out the dashboard. This is one of the best architectured front-end application that I've ever seen. There is a ton of components. If you want to learn more about React.js, this is a great place to start because it teaches you how to properly split your apps, etc., etc. So Parse was a backend as a service that had more than 1 million users, more than 750 apps, 100,000 weekly running apps. When it went open source, the target is just one user. And we are all almost software engineers here, and we know we don't design software the same way if we want to address 1 million users to 1 user. So the platform had to be scaled down. The product is completely different. These are not the same requirements. Because the product is different, we went from a massively scalable system for millions of users to a platform that only addresses 1 user. The technology had to change. You don't make the same technical choices if you're building an app for 1 million users than you are for 1. And then, because the technology had to change, the audience has shifted too. This is not the same audience. This is not a service anymore. This is a software that you run. And this is what's interesting. So, released in, January, the open source server, we started having a lot of complaints. Oh man, why is it not working? Release the original source code. And after a while, I guess the people at Facebook and Parse got a bit tired of hearing that complaint that the code was not the original Parse code, and that was the answer. You don't build software the same way. So this is why it went through a full rewrite of the code base. It comes with bugs. We usually don't rewrite code, but do you want to install that just for making a little experiment in a mobile application? I don't want to. So I'd rather have a buggy code than a code that I can't manage. So under the belly, it's been built as an Express.js app. It runs on Node.js, obviously. That makes it very, very easy to integrate with your current web server stack. We also built a command line interface. I spent a lot of time on it because I don't want to code to manage my parse server. I just want to configure it and make it work. The same way I was clicking buttons on parse.com, I just want to spin a server and have the CLI do everything for me. So the CLI is as functional as it can be. You can configure pretty much everything you want through configuration files or environment variables. It's built on top of ES6, so with Babel and all that stuff, because ES6 is not available yet, really. It's heavily tested. We've got a coverage of over 93%, more than 1,000 tests, and the test matrix is over 8 environments. So 2 different node versions, 3 versions of MongoDB, and PostgreSQL. So it's really rock solid. And another constraint, we wanted it to be easy to deploy and easy to run. So we tried to keep it as light as possible, so when you can run it pretty much on any kind of machine with just 150 meg of footprint. We've got machine processing, 50, 70 requests per second, and it only takes 150 megs of RAM. So that's really, really interesting. Open source. So was released, I didn't expect that traction. 10,000 stars in just 5 months. So that's 2,000 stars a month, you know the calculation. It is really, really impressive to see that many people expressing an interest in the project. We merged 500 pull requests. This is massive. Yes, there was a lot of bugs, and there was a need for those pull requests to be merged. But this comes from more than 80 people. So the community is growing, and that's really, really fun. We squashed 1,300 issues. So we try to have a very, very, very fast pace of development. And there has been 2,500 forks, so I guess people are just liking the project and trying to experiment with it. Technically, you started with that, just that parse. You don't need to know anything else. So as a user, that's just great. One single point of contact. If it doesn't work, that's just parse that is done. Now, I mean, that's problematic. Yeah, remember, those people are mobile developers. What do they know? How do you pick your backend? How do you pick your infrastructure? Should you go over AWS? Should you use Google Cloud? IBM just released Bluemix. Why not? Should you do Heroku? What are the limits of all those platforms, of all those constraints? And it's a bit complicated for us to educate the current users, because we are not here to educate those people. We are not here to help them make those choices. We are here to provide an open source project that works. And then we don't go into the database, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really complicated for everyone. Originally, those front-end developers, mobile or web, they have no back-end skills. And if you just want to take an hour and skim through the issues, you'll see that how do I set an environment variable? You know, like those basic questions that most of us can answer are some questions that are asked every day, over and over, because the people have no back-end skills. They never touch, for most of them, an infrastructure. They don't know what AWS is doing. They don't know what is the difference between a container and an EC2 instance. How does it work? You know, and that's problematic because they want everything to work. And let's not get into managing a database. Like MongoDB looks easy from the outside, but it's not that easy. Should I use a replica set? How much replicas? How do I make sure I got availability? What do I do when there is a failover? How do I manage all that? This is something very, very complex that's been added on top of something very simple. So the product is different. It's not a service. So our existing users, and we tend to address, you know, all this crowd and all those questions. Our existing users, what they care about is really the continuity of service. When you got code in your mobile app and you've built and you spend, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years growing your community, growing your product, you don't want to rewrite everything from one day to the other. If you want to rewrite it, you want to do it, you know, small step at a time. So they want continuity of service. They want stability. They want to rely on the open source code as they've been relying on the service, and that's really important too. And for some of them, they want to migrate, and we can't do anything about that. Even if the parse-server project was perfectly rolling and super stable, some people just don't want to deal with the backend. So they're going to move over to Firebase, which made a great job as trying to poke people around. But that's just fine, you know, we can't address everyone. Then we got the new users, and we can't really measure how many new users we have versus the current user who are still interested in keeping the continuity of service. But I think if I was an engineer today looking for a backend, I would really consider Parse. First, because it's open source. It's highly opinionated, yes, but this is just object-oriented database management. You create your objects, put your properties, and boom, it gets saved. So that's a pretty, you know, honest opinion and simple opinion. It's not like Firebase when, you know, you've got a whole new concept of database to wrap your head around. The SDKs, the client SDKs, are battle tested. They have been out for more than 5 years, and they are working. So you can rely on the code that is in your client to be stable and efficient. And the new kind of users are the software as a service companies that are starting to pop up. And what they want is make money. And that's understandable. They want to help people go from Parse to another, to their service without disrupting the continuity and without thinking of the backend. So we see a few of those. Some are doing a great job, some are doing a less good job. What I expect in the near future is that those companies start contributing back to the open source, which hasn't really happened yet. So I really expect that we have those software as a service company becoming a bit more major contributors to the open source. And I think that's just fair to expect, not that they are just, you know, using the software that contributors are providing, but also become an active part of the community, not only a consuming part. So moving forward, open source really matters. I think this is the best thing that happened to Parse. From the ground up, we designed it, the people at Facebook designed it to be extensible. You can, if you got your backend, which is Google Cloud, and you want to use the Google Cloud file service to store your files, you can do it. If you want to build a new one, you can plug and play different components of the server, and that is a good part. Azure contributed, Google contributed, AWS contributed, so we see a lot of interest from the different cloud providers to contribute those extensions onto parse-server without modifying the core of the system. So you can easily swap parts of the implementation. Something really fun that happened is the live queries. So basically, we've got a real-time ability now to listen to changes from the database into the client if you want to build a more reactive application. Instead of polling for changes, you can listen to changes and they are fired up in your app. So this is a feature that's been in Firebase since the beginning. And now it's on parse-server and it's working great. People are loving it. Next one. Native social authentication. Since Parse only had Twitter and Facebook for login, which is cool, but not enough. So one of the first things that I contributed is a really flexible way to manage authentication. So you can bring in any auth token-based authentication to parse-server very easily with just a few lines of code, and you're good to go. I think we've got 8 GitHub, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. So you have all those social authentication that are very, very easy to implement now. Next big thing is Postgres. We are working actively on it. We are very, very close to have it working. I'm really excited about that. Bringing back the schema-constrained database by Postgres, allowing transactions if you are building a system that requires those features. And this is something that would have never happened if Parse was, keeping working as it is right now. So that is great. We are, I would say, a month away from shipping it. It's already being tested right now. We are very, very close. And then obviously CockroachDB, I look forward to that because it works with the Postgres language. And then last feature that we want to work on really hard with the advent of microservices and all that stuff. We want Cloud Code to go to the next level, and we want you to run very, very small snippets of code to modify the behavior of your installation very easily. Thanks.